5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Better make it 10.
Okay, 10 minutes.
Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and it's time for another 10-minute off-the-cuff review about another movie that I just saw for the first time and that came out somewhat recently. This is the 2014 biopic Selma about the 1964 March on Washington to ensure black voter rights, of course focused primarily on Martin Luther King Jr., although less of a straight-up character piece for him than I expected it to be. Certainly, looking at this on storytelling terms, he gets an arc, and he is a character who wants something, is attempting to get it, has things that stand in his way, and we learn things about him, and he learns things about himself through attempting to get that. But there are certainly other historical figures and people involved in the march and trying to prevent the march from happening, and who are just against black equality, racial equality in general, that factor into this. And there were a lot more people that the movie focused on than I kind of expected it to. But for my purposes here, I'm going to talk more about Martin Luther King than anything. And again, he is, if anyone is the protagonist of this piece, he certainly is. This is a snapshot in time movie, and the break in status quo is the decision to march on Washington, and then what exactly happens with that, and all of, again, the hurdles that Martin Luther King and company have to jump through in order to finally get Lyndon B. Johnson to pass the to work toward passing legislation in order to make sure that blacks are able to vote. I really liked just jumping straight into it. First of all, I liked that this isn't an overview of Martin Luther King's life. I like that snapshot in time. The difficulty with it is that I think that you kind of have to bring some historical context, and you have to know some of that history in order to appreciate this as a story. There are certain characters that there are certain players that, if you don't know anything about them, will come off as kind of stiff and stale and one-dimensional. Specifically George Wallace, who is an absolutely fascinating character, historical figure. And when I was a kid, I saw a TV movie, I think it was a TV movie, about George Wallace, and I had never really seen him outside of his wheelchair after what happens to him in the early 70s, and so it was really strange to see this portrayal, because I'd never seen anything with him in it this early. But anyway, I felt like I knew a little bit about George Wallace going into this, or at least had seen something dealing with him before, and so I was kind of comfortable with that. But it's a difficult kind of tightrope to walk, because it's a movie that doesn't want to be a documentary. Straight from the horse's mouth, the director, Ava DuVernay, when she was criticized by a couple of creative licenses that she took in this, specifically Lyndon B. Johnson and Martin Luther King's relationship, and how in this Lyndon B. Johnson is kind of begrudgingly helping Martin Luther King Jr., and they have kind of an uneasy relationship. A lot of folks say that that's not how it really went in real life, and that they were much more cordial, and that Martin Luther King understood Lyndon B. Johnson's difficulties and hurdles that he had to jump through in order to, his limitations in his office, and vice versa. And that Lyndon B. Johnson was also more understanding, and maybe not as kind of dismissive and belittling as he seems here. Belittling is too strong of a word, but he talks about Martin Luther King wanting voting rights for blacks as like he keeps saying this voting thing as if it's just not a priority for him. And then, of course, at the end, when you see that he's able to put the legislation through, when you just watch the movie, it feels like a thing that he kind of could have always maybe done, just looking at it as a story. But anyway, the difficulty is with things like that, it's easy for people to look at a piece like this that is more or less, pretty true to history, and certainly looks incredibly authentic. A wonderfully well-directed movie. and you know, it's easy for people to look at that and want it to be exactly perfectly accurate. But she looks at it, as I do most biopics, as telling a story based on a historical event, as opposed to trying to show us exactly what happened with that event. It's sticky because I don't know that the movie itself is really presented that way. It is in the sense that it's incredibly cinematic and that it's a thrilling piece, and it's a very political thriller. When you look at it just as, and I don't think that it's that it's horribly sensationalist, but when you look at it as a movie-going experience and as just a narrative, as a story, it has certainly a lot of elements that make it a gripping, exciting movie. It has relationship drama, it has political intrigue, it has kind of conspiracy stuff with the FBI wiretapping Martin Luther King and keeping tabs on him. I like the kind of timestamps and location stamps that we get in order to kind of help us remember where we are and keep track of time throughout the movie. But it always comes from the FBI. There are always these stamps where they're keeping tabs on him, and and then, you know, you have violence, obviously, and you have like I said, relationship stuff, and so it's certainly a really story-worthy movie to make, but I feel like it kind of presents itself like this is how it really happened, and that's maybe not what was intended, and I think a lot of these things really, biopics really kind of walk that line, but you know, I read reviews where people like, I think A.O. Scott, I forget, where people said things like, this movie should be shown to kids in school as part of a history lesson with Martin Luther King Jr. And I agree with that to a degree, but you have to have the caveat of this is a fictional narrative based on reality. It's somewhat loose. It's maybe tighter than other biopics, and it maybe has more of a sense of historical responsibility than some other things. But there are things that the director Duvernay comes right out in interviews and says, yes, we took creative license. I'm a storyteller before I'm a historian, and I really like that. I really respect her for that, but I think the movie could maybe make that a little bit clearer of what exactly its purpose is. The performances in this are absolutely spectacular. I cannot get my head around the fact that, and I just know I'm going to blow his name, that David Oyelowo as Martin Luther King Jr. Was not nominated for an Oscar. He absolutely should have been. He just tears it up in this role. I feel like I'm looking at Martin Luther King Jr. Something, by the way, that I'm impressed with is Duvernay apparently had to rewrite all of Martin Luther King's speeches. She wasn't able to use word for word, and I didn't know you could do this, but apparently another studio has the right, or had at least at the time, the rights to those speeches, and she wasn't able to work out any kind of a deal with them. And so she had to come up with language that wouldn't break copyright, but that still was true to the essence of what the speeches were about and true to the way Martin Luther King spoke, and I just thought she nailed them. Like I said, King has a good character arc here. I know it's hard for me not to relate everything to superhero stuff, but he kind of feels like he has that superhero thing where he is a person who has self-doubt and wrestles with not being sure if he can really go all the way through with the difficult things he has to do as the leader of this movement, and he struggles with, and I like seeing this side of him. He struggles with being the leader and the symbol and standing up for everything that he believes in, and importantly, and this is where the movie is very, very poignant and very relevant to today. Being a symbol for, or not a, but being an advocate for equality as opposed to one race getting special treatment over another race. And he's trying to do all of that, and he doesn't always believe in himself. He's not always sure that he can do it, and he also has responsibilities at home, and he has a wife, and she's afraid that he's going to get assassinated, and that's a conversation that I would think would have to come up in that family. They lose Malcolm X during all of this. Back to performances real quick. I'm out of time. I was really impressed with Tom Wilkinson as President Johnson. Wilkinson is the perfect choice for that. I never thought I would see Carmine Falcone as President Johnson, but that was an inspired choice. I thought all of the casting choices were spot on. And as I said, unfortunately, I'm completely out of time. There's all kinds of other things I could have said, but I absolutely recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. Like I said, I think it's one of the better biopics that I've seen, despite my reservations about, and I'm just of two minds about it, with this particular material, I'm not sure how important having a responsibility for historical accuracy is or should be. That's a conversation that I always kind of want to have with people after I see a thing like this. But certainly, just on a storytelling level, it's gripping. There are bits of it that are haunting, and especially with people who get brutalized or murdered for being a part of this movement and for sympathizing with it. And I think that it is very mature about its themes, and I was really riveted while watching it. Thanks as always for watching, sure appreciate it, and I will see you again next time with another 10-minute off-the-cuff review. Thanks again for watching. I'm Captain Logan.